Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Imagine More. Man, we're excited. We got Mike back in the building. Mike, how you been?
I'm doing good. I don't know that I'm actually literally back in the building, but it's good to be with you guys. Back in the show, right? Back in the show, which is as good a place as there can be.
Yeah, I was so excited when I heard you were going to be a guest again, given that, you were in a campaign trail running for president. And so I'm like really looking forward to hear what that's about, how that turned out, and we're really excited to have you for that. And we have Seth back after months. How you doing, Seth?
Yeah, I wasn't the only one that took an absence. We'll say it. Yeah, we've both been very busy. Glad to be back. I've been doing a lot of stuff that you'll be hearing about pretty soon. But I'm glad we can have this conversation. I feel like we're gonna have a good one tonight.
Yeah. How's SoCal life doing? Because I know you just moved from Northern Cal to South.
Did just move to Los Angeles area, and finally settling in. Things are getting comfortable, so nothing to stress over anymore.
You already got the LA look, man. You have the LA look down.
My sister bought me this shirt, so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so like I said, guys, we have a great show for you today. Mike's back. And so, Mike, we're just going to kick off straight. Let us know, how was the campaigning for president?
Well, do you mean before the convention or after the convention? Maybe you mean after the convention when I was the vice presidential nominee for the Libertarian Party, or maybe you mean seeking the presidential nomination before the convention.
I mean, both takes a lot of courage, a lot of fundraising, a lot of support, a lot of talking.
Well, a lot of work. Let's leave it at a lot of work. Like I suppose, most projects turn into, if you really care about them, a great deal. I worked very, very hard, and I don't know whether, my experience was the same as anyone else's might be. I don't know whether the lessons that I learned are the same lessons that anyone else would learn. But I did learn that hard work pays off, but it takes a lot more than hard work. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Success in politics means a whole lot of planets and stars aligning, because the object of the game is to represent the interests of other people.
Yeah.
And I think where a lot of politicians go wrong is that they confuse politics for leadership. Being a politician is not about being a leader. It's not about changing people's minds. It's about representing how you feel as honestly and with as much integrity as humanly possible, as clearly and as forcefully as possible, so that people who agree with your philosophy, your positions, agree with your intentions, can find you and rally around those ideas. That's your job. Your job is not to change people's minds per se. Sometimes you have the opportunity to do so, and to the extent to which those opportunities present themselves, that's terrific, right? Yeah. But that's more a matter of battling the philosophical battle rather than politics. Right. What we're doing tonight is spreading the message, maybe changing some minds, but politics is different. Politics is about representing something and letting people find you and rally around it. And to be successful, therefore, it means finding ways to project your voice. And so that takes a lot of money, a lot of interest on behalf of the media. It takes a lot of things to align. It takes the interest of your own party and a significant team. It takes a good running mate, in my case. So a lot has to come together.
That's awesome. So you were saying that obviously that's the part of the process to becoming a presidential nominee. I think in any party has those tools. So tell us, you got to the convention floor. You worked up this. The best campaign you possibly can for the presidency. What happened? Why did you choose to decide to? Well, I mean, obviously you choose to decide to be vice president because you want to serve, but why? What happened?
I didn't get as many votes as a couple of the other guys did, right? That's,
Yeah, exactly.
let's start there. I didn't get as many votes as Chase did and as Michael Rechtenwald did. They got more votes than I did. Good for them, by the way.
Yeah.
I did not choose to be vice president at that point. I asked them to form a ticket without me.
Wow.
And cut me out of it. But my suggestion was declined. Mises people were not interested in that, and each side suggested that, I form a ticket with one of them, and for a lot of complex reasons that came up over the last few days leading up to that point, I chose to work with Chase Oliver's team, and that turned out to be a good decision. That worked out pretty well.
Yeah. That was awesome.
Yeah, you really were kind of the unity ticket, huh? You're kind of in between both camps, so I feel like that makes sense.
Well, we tried. I made the argument that it would have been fairly unifying if Michael Rechtenwald and Chase Oliver had formed a team without me. I thought that would have been in the interest in the party, that it would have formed a unification that I thought would have been a really good idea. I still think that would have been a good idea. If it were up to me, I would have cut me out.
No, you're pretty charismatic. I don't think they would have did that.
I don't know if I go quite that far. But, I was a lot of folks' second choice, and some folks, I suppose I was their third choice or fourth choice. But anyway, forming a ticket with Chase, we come from slightly different directions. We spent a lot of time immediately talking about how we felt about certain positions and policies and found that we really didn't have much to disagree about. So I'm not sure how much unification there really was. I think that there was a perception that we needed some unification more than we actually needed some unification.
There definitely is.
There's probably some value in that.
Yeah. I was going to say, there definitely was visibly a major rift in the Libertarian Party. Even without having, great insight from the outside, it definitely came across, the Mises Caucus specifically was very ride or die for their own people. And they don't seem as willing to compromise as somebody like Chase, which I've always respected Chase. I've been a big fan of his. I didn't vote for him, but, he would have been my second choice over Jill Stein, who technically would be more in line with my views. I just find her reprehensible. So I respect integrity more than policies a lot of times, because anybody can claim to stand for a policy, but they don't necessarily live it.
Well, it is an interesting observation. I would agree with you certainly about the perceptions of a rift. I'm not sure that everyone who is dedicated to perceiving and in many cases fostering the rift would do as good a job as they think they would in terms of identifying actual policies that separate various camps in the Libertarian Party. The perception persists.
Well, I feel like the main perception, I agree. I feel like on policy-wise, you'll find 2 to 3% disagreement. Everybody pretty much agrees in the Libertarian Party. It's one of the most principally unified parties. But I think that the main difference is your side wanted to win or grow the party versus them, which is they're so virtue signally. You know what I mean? They're just not even they just want to be perceived as 100% correct, and they're so willing to cut ties with anybody they disagree with, which is so leftist. That's everything that I'm experiencing now too. So it's just can anybody find common ground on anything and grow together, or do you have to cut yourself from the branch from this wrong side that you're sitting on? I feel like so many people.
I share your criticism. I'm not sure I would characterize it necessarily as leftist. You and I both know a lot of leftists who fall into that category, though, so there is a lot of overlap there, no question about it. And I think that it's fair to say that the Libertarian Party will get beyond this. We'll get beyond the silliness. At least I certainly hope so. I think it will, and I hope that it will. Over the next couple of years, I think the Libertarian Party will get back on its feet. I think it'll become as healthy as it was a few years ago. It'll figure out how to raise money again. It's been a while since it's been able to raise more than $1.50.
Yeah.
And I think it'll figure out how to to support good candidates and achieve ballot access and get a lot of the blocking and tackling done that it has not been very good at the last couple of years. I think it'll get back on its feet.
I mean, 2016 was full ballot access, right? Or is that 2020?
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah. I remember Gary Johnson.
That's not a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly.
But in fairness, it wasn't the Libertarian Party's fault as much as it was the Democrats' fault in Illinois and New York that changed the rules and set the bar so high, and did so in reaction to the success of the Libertarian Party, by the way. So that's a bit of a weird thing. My longer-term concern for the Libertarian Party is that I don't see a lot of reason to believe that these cycles of people coming in from the outside and the party splitting and everyone gets mad at each other and there's a food fight and the party has a hard time reconciling and raising money and there's all kinds of shenanigans going on in various states, and then you get over that, it gets back on its feet for a few years. That cycle, I think, is something that is likely to persist in the future.
Yeah.
So even though I think the Libertarian Party is likely to get back on its feet, I don't see a whole lot of reason to believe that cycle is not going to repeat itself over and over and over again, as it has several times in the past. And I think the reason for that is fairly structural and therefore long-term, which is to say, you're the third party in a two-party system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're the third party in a two-party system, you are by definition outside of the system.
Yeah.
So that means, right, that's just semantics. That's just by definition. So that means necessarily that you're going to attract a lot of people who are not interested in the system, who are interested in other things.
Yeah. More interested in being the third party.
Yeah. They're going to be, you're going to attract a lot of people who are interested either in themselves or interested in debate, as opposed to using the political process to achieve political goals, policy-oriented goals. You're just going to get a lot of people that have different motivations than inside the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. I'm not suggesting one is good or one is bad. I'm just suggesting that if you've got people in a political party that aren't interested in politics, that your success is not going to be political.
Yeah.
Whatever success that might be.
Well, here's the thing, Mike. I had a question about that because I ran a couple years ago for Congress, and I also ran for, I think, shortly thereafter, it was like State House.
Yeah.
Our real true race for me was running for Congress. The State House was something that we wanted to just try to make some kind of an impact.
We had like a month or two left, and they had gerrymandered our district, so it was kind of like a last-second Hail Mary since we had so much momentum, put so much time into it.
Which district was this?
This
Florida
was
15.
District 15, right? The old District 15 in Florida. Yeah, so one of the things I found, and Seth will tell you this, he worked in the campaign, it was a lot of it there was the people, and then there was the establishment.
Yeah.
Right? And we felt momentum, we felt the strength that we were doing, that we had, but the establishment never got on board with our campaign.
They pretended we didn't exist.
You mean the establishment inside the Libertarian Party? Is that what you're referring to?
No, we ran a Democratic ticket. The Democratic ticket.
Yeah.
And so for us, we saw that there was this divide between what people really wanted and what the party wants. Do you feel like the Libertarian deals with that a lot too?
I don't think the Libertarian Party has a lot of candidates that depend on a Libertarian Party establishment.
Yeah.
We should be so lucky as to have a Libertarian Party establishment.
He's the only elected official in the Libertarian Party, not anymore, but Justin Amash, it's the closest you have to an establishment politician.
In Congress, in Washington, that's right. There are folks that get elected to local races all the time, of course.
True. New Hampshire.
Especially nonpartisan races. But it's very difficult to find resources that are just sitting around established, that somebody might call an establishment in any of the states. Even states as successful as, say, the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania that used to be and has been recently quite successful at running candidates for nonpartisan races. Even there, I don't think there are a lot of people who would say there's an establishment of resources waiting for a candidate. In other words, you've got to scrounge up everything on your own anyway.
Yeah.
I do understand that in a lot of places, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have this problem where the establishment makes decisions about the allocation of resources leading up to a primary. I take it you had a primary that was very difficult.
Yep, exactly.
And that's a problem. That's a problem. It's a problem as old as time.
Yeah.
You're not asserting otherwise. I didn't mean that you were. We all understand how this works. It is a disappointment. The primary process is damn near what you would call corrupt in that sense. That's a heavy-handed term. I don't know that I want to call it corrupt because that implies something illegal is going on. And it's rarely something that, can be prosecuted. I mean, every once in a while you got someone who's really a jerk. But for the most part, the stuff we're talking about is fostering a familiarity among a club of established politicians that want one of their own or, don't like outsiders, that sort of thing.
You don't have to say corrupt, but you could say like it's an impure process in the sense that it's not like purely from the bottom up, decided by the people. There's a lot of party hierarchy, which is what we're talking about. Establishments, there's terms are a little different because establishment could refer to like they're already the established politicians in whatever, but the party hierarchy is something that applies both to Libertarian Party and the Democrats.
Yeah, that's
where the top down you have to cater to the people running the direction of the platform. So
the problem is to be that guy, to be the one around all the time, hanging out in the clubs. Yeah, like all the Democratic clubs, the Republican clubs. You really can't have a regular life.
No, it's exhausting and consuming.
Yeah, you're literally there to appease people.
Yeah, and for the sake of your audience, Jesse, you and I were talking about the weird culture that is Washington, D.C. before we came into this recording, and we both observed that, Washington is obviously one industry town where everything is about politics. That necessarily means that it's all about who you know, and it's all about trying to get as big a share of a fixed pie. It's not about growth and adding value and creating things in an entrepreneurial spirit in an economic sense. It's not about any of that. And that leads to, you made a really interesting observation just before one of you guys hit the record button. I want to share with your audience, you said that it leads to a no trust culture, a no trust environment, and that is exactly right. It's every man for himself in these party politic clubs, and it is really dehumanizing.
Yeah, it's to me, I run my own business, I have my own law firm. And I haven't told this to Seth, but I feel more impact on my day-to-day law firm than I felt when I ran.
Yeah.
Which is...
Absolutely.
And that shouldn't be the case. If you're running for office, you should feel like you're having an impact.
Yeah.
But it's more
you should feel that way. Remember the other point that I have been making, which is politicians are not leaders.
Yeah.
You're not actually creating value. You're just representing a set of principles or policies or interests or action steps, methodology. You're representing something as clearly and forcefully as possible so that the people who agree with all of that can identify you as such and support you. It's not really about creating things, adding value, changing people's lives. It's not doing what it is this podcast does, which is spread information, spread the word, helping people understand things they wouldn't have understood otherwise.
Yeah.
That is so enlightening, because that was one of the things I felt as a candidate running. And I didn't know if people is that why you think a lot of people are so disenfranchised with politics and a two-party system? Because they're like, you're not really helping me. You know,
Right.
you're coming every 4 years, you're saying this stuff, but the
Then you help
machine.
themselves.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right.
Then they help themselves. They don't help you, but they're using
Yeah.
you and your vote and your optimism to give themselves more power. Like
I believe
more
that is
career
typically,
success.
I think that is typically the case, absolutely. And it comes from this idea of attracting people to the political sphere who don't come from a value-creating environment. They come from a zero-sum mindset. Good for you, Jesse, for running your own business. A partner of mine and we ran our own business for 8 or 9 years a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It is enormously rewarding. Not only because you have some control, you're the one making decisions every single day, and you're flying many times by the seat of your pants, and that can be thrilling, but also because you're totally divorced from anything that you might consider political, right? You're not sucking up to a boss. No amount of being nice to someone in the office is going to help your sorry ass, right?
Yeah.
You actually have to add value, or you're not eating.
Yeah, you're not eating, you're fired. That's really what it is. And I think that, that's what I'm starting to realize. It's like, when I look at Trump every day, and I mean every day, he's on the TV, like
Every day.
Every day. He does these things, he says these things, and people believe it, but he's not really adding value.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of people are just still like, oh, he's doing a lot. What do you think is that disconnection? Why do people think that he's doing a lot when he's not really actually doing anything?
I think, first of all, let me say up front, I'm not sure the answer, but I got a couple of theories.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to share my theories.
Yeah.
One is that there is a perception that he is adding some value, because I think that some of his ideas do come from a place where he's trying to do so. In other words, there is a certain through line in the president that suggests that he sees the world as a messed up place, and he believes that, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, huge benefit of the doubt here. This is on the positive side. We'll get to the negative in a minute. But there is a through line in his thinking that if I can just fix some of the stupidity, the world would be a better place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that in many cases, he and the people around him really do believe, as dumb as I might think it is, really do believe that tariffs will help make our economy work better. And because there are certain instances in which certain tariffs, under the right circumstances, could achieve a particular strategic objective, there's enough gray area that gets murky.
Yeah.
I think that you could argue that the vast majority of Americans wanted there to be some control over the border.
Yeah.
He identified that as a place where he could add some value by getting some control over that.
Yeah.
Those are just, two little examples. Having said that, I think that the president often, and by the way, I lay a lot of the negativeness at the feet of the people with whom he surrounds himself. I think he gets the worst staff work I have ever seen.
Which
I don't know that there is a single person in that administration that I would hire. I don't know. I've never seen Susan Wiles in action, so she may be the greatest thing since sliced bread. But that cabinet is full of dingleberries.
Yeah.
Absolutely silly sycophants.
Worse than the worst.
He's getting horrible advice and horrible execution. Over and over and over again, this team has snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Policies that couldn't possibly fail. He has managed to find a way for them to fail. And I would identify the border issue and all these deportations as such an example. Every Republican, that might be an exaggeration, almost every Republican wanted control over the border, and the vast majority of Democrats wanted there to be some control over the border. Everybody wants to live in a nation of laws, and that necessarily implies a great deal of deportations, as there had been under the Obama administration and administrations before then. What could go wrong? Well, the administration found a way to piss off not just libertarians, right? Piss us off the most by, in so many cases, flaunting due process requirements, adjusting the semantics surrounding due process requirements, and gaslighting us about what the results were. You know, this idea of requiring only, instead of, you know, the normal requirement, I'll get off of this particular example in a moment, it's a hobby horse of mine, but normally the requirement to arrest someone, right, is probable cause, meaning the law enforcement authority needs to believe that probably there was a crime committed and you committed it, right? Well, to detain someone during an investigation, the bar isn't quite that high, of course. It's specific and articulable, reasonable suspicion. Okay, in non-criminal cases, that is typically the requirement as well. Reasonable suspicion. You can detain someone for purposes of deporting them, for example. Okay, that doesn't mean, constitutionally speaking, that doesn't mean that you can go with reasonable suspicion alone in order to send someone to a prison in El Salvador. Right? That's just not how this works. But they just flaunt it. And then the next thing that they have done, and you know, I don't put this at the feet of the president completely, but it's just bad staff work. The next thing they did was change what they consider to be the requirements for reasonable suspicion, all the way down to, you know, they were in a time and place where a lot of other illegal aliens hang out. Well, that's not what the Supreme Court decided it was. That's not what any well-trained police officer in the United States understands it to be. That's just something that they invented, right? And that's not how this is supposed to work. Now, you know, on the one hand, you might say, you know, it's probably okay for the chief executive to say something like, I was elected to get control of the border. You people go down there and get control over the border. I was elected to implement law and order. You people start implementing deportations. And by the way, I want big numbers to show that I'm really badass and kicking names. Get out there and get me some big numbers. You know, it's probably okay for a chief executive to talk like that. It's not okay for people who should know better to disregard the requirements for probable cause and for reasonable suspicion. There's got to be someone who is adult enough and adherent sufficiently to the Constitution to say, boss, we get the objectives, but it has to be kosher with the Constitution. And the reason for that is twofold. One, because this is the United States of America. Number two, as if number one weren't enough, right? Number two, it's going to, in the long run, undermine your own objectives.
Exactly.
The American people will hang with us if we don't screw this up. Because it's the most popular policy in the history of presidential elections. There's almost no way for this to go wrong. I can't believe he overplayed such a strong hand. And there was no one there to save him from such stupidity.
And that's a very good point, especially because you were talking earlier about Trump. You know, on his own, he makes his own mistakes or whatever, but it's fundamentally on the people he hires and all the people advising him that are leading to this. But the biggest problem is the difference between this administration and his previous administration is he got rid of all those people intentionally. anybody that is not a yes man, does not kiss his ass every step of the way, they're out. So who is that? It's inherently intentional for him to replace. There's nobody to advise him. Nobody is going to even mention that there could be some externalities potential, which is, again, if somebody had his best interests in mind, there's certain things that they would do, certain ways that they would massage messages and, ways he's communicating to make it seem, like they aren't objectively define the Constitution and intentionally just the amount of times that he's like so openly said he does not care about the Constitution or the way of law or like
every
basic
week.
human decency. Go ahead.
Every week.
Yeah, every week. But nobody seems to care.
This week it's maybe we're going to do the same thing as we're doing in Washington. Maybe we're going to do the same thing in Los Angeles or Chicago or New York. Is there no one there to say we're going to have to find different language, because when you run all that together in the same paragraph, it makes it look like you don't care about the constitutional differences between a state and a non-state, between federal control over the District of Columbia and asserting federal authority in Illinois, right? And when you make it look like you don't care, you make yourself look like you're flaunting the Constitution, and not to put too fine a point on it, that ain't American. And that's not where we want to be in terms of communication as an administration.
He's just gotten away with so much for so long, things that no other president, no other human would be able to get past the critical lens of both sides. Like, people have very principled objections to things he's doing from both conservative and liberal perspectives. But if you are,
I don't think anyone else would try.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine the three of us, right? Imagine the three of us are working for an administration, and someone comes and says, which is true, crime is out of control in a handful of cities. A whole bunch of, pick Chicago, okay? I grew up outside of Chicago. I'll pick on Chicago for a minute. Someone comes to us, the three of us are having lunch together, and says, what are you three idiots going to figure out what to do about this? I don't think the three of us are going to come up with, let's federalize the police department in Chicago. I'm not writing that down on a piece of paper as one of our 7 options.
No, I don't think anyone should. I mean, the idea that he was able to float that, and no one in Congress said anything.
Yeah. Do you hear about the things he's talking about with, like, man, there's the DC cleanup, all that stuff, the crime rate's consistently going down. And then, what was it, Big Balls, that one dude that was in the Doge department? I mean, it's very widely speculated that it was a framed attack on him, because he was saying he got attacked by a bunch of people, and they were like, this is Kamala country, which no liberal has ever talked like that, ever. And he got...
What, you're saying we have a Jesse Smollett problem?
No. That's a different thing, but it's similar to that.
No, I mean, what you're describing is the mirror image.
Yeah, it's very similar to that, and we all knew that was a hoax from the start. So it's like, you really expect us to believe that? And then he takes the
Did you know that it was a hoax?
Oh,
I went a good 48 hours not knowing it. I'm always the slowest one.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a hoax either.
No, not at first.
Yeah, I guess that's so long ago that I don't remember my initial impression.
Seth figured it out faster than we did.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, it's just, I feel like there's no check and balances like there used to be.
Exactly. That's where I was leading.
So I think for me, it just seems like if we keep this up within the next year or two, you might just call us a dictatorship.
It's not far.
Because if he's able to run the way he's doing with no checks and balances, I mean, he literally done everything. Has been rubber stamped essentially. Even the Supreme Court, they're finding ways around some of the things that he's doing because they don't want to say, Mr. President, that's unconstitutional. So they're finding ways around it by saying, yeah, we're not going to take that issue. We'll talk about this issue.
Yeah.
And it's just almost like everyone's green-lighting him to do whatever he wants. And I think there's 2 things that can come from it. Either everyone that's smarter than me probably in Washington figures like, hey, the American people voted for him. Let him do what he wants to do. And when he messes it up, then we have to vote for him. It's pretty Machiavellian. I'm not saying that could happen, But I think that's some people's play in Washington is to just let him run the muck, let him break the system. Or
well, there is that attitude.
know.
The problem with the attitude, of course, is that what do you do about the next schmuck who thinks that
all right.
she or he has the right to claim as much authority? I think it's a real problem. I think that the courts are eventually going to. Well, the courts have already put up some roadblocks. I think that the courts will continue to do so and in very important ways. I also think he is going to bump into some political pushback eventually
after midterms
in certain areas, possibly after the midterms. Absolutely. Well, especially if it flips Democrat. I don't know that it will. It's
hard to tell right now.
There's nothing good for America about having a Democratic Party with its head so firmly up its own ass. I mean, it's just, I mean, those people have been such a disappointment, and I'm rooting for them to eventually develop a libertarian wing, but I'm afraid it's going to take several thousand years.
Well, the problem with the Democratic Party is there's too many factions. It's like you need to pick a lane, and that's your lane. And that's the problem with the Democratic Party. They're just trying to appease too many people.
It is a problem. Jesse, you know what I think is the problem with that is that I think the philosophy that holds the whole thing together is a real fundamental anti-libertarian concept that the way you get ahead in life is to take something from someone else. It goes back to this constant sum mindset.
Yeah.
Not adding value, but what's in it for our group or this group, what's in it for my constituents, what's in it for women, what's in it for men, what's in it for this racial group, what's in it for that racial group, what's in it for, this politically identifiable subsection versus the other one. That seems to be the philosophy that holds the whole thing together rather than a more modern philosophy, not to put too fine a point on it, but since the Enlightenment, since the 18th century, we've had a growing understanding that the way economics really works is everyone's trying to add value, and that's how the economy grows, which seems to be something that the Democratic Party is just, with which they're completely out of touch.
I think we're talking about two different people, because when you say the Democratic Party, I'm hearing the voters, and I feel like they're a lot more. Some of them are less educated, but I feel like a lot more of them are more understanding of how things affect them versus the establishment, the party leadership, the people that are completely controlled by the special interests, by the lobbyists, by the the.
You're right, and that's why they're so unpopular.
I agree. I 100% agree. I feel like leadership, if they got replaced. If they got replaced, there would be such a void of popularity that Democrats could be unstoppable if they just replaced all the dumbasses at the top who are telling them the wrong things to do every step of the way.
And this goes to my earlier point. Politicians are not leaders, meaning they have to represent a set of ideas. You can't just take a politician who believes in A, B, and C and say, okay, now he believes in X, Y, and Z, so you should vote for him. That's not how this works. You've got to get rid of them. You can't say all of a sudden, right, Nancy Pelosi is all about free markets, let's vote for Nancy. That's not the way this works. And so it takes time to replace these people, and that's what has to be done for the Democratic Party.
The hardest part of what you're saying, which makes sense, is in order to change, you can't influence the power. The power has to be replaced. You have to become the power, and to become the power to an extent, you have to suck up to the power, just enough that you can get in contention with them. For example,
or overthrow the establishment. To Jesse's point,
for sure. And I think part of the problem is we were talking about politicians. They're all, they're in for self-interest. I do think most politicians do have that perspective, but I do think they genuinely do think they can go in there and change, and they'll be the ones to do things. And I think they go into the system. I think they go into the system wanting to change things, and they leave the system more changed by the system than.
I don't know.
I think Jesse's about to punch you in the nose. Sure. Go ahead, Jesse.
I honestly think that they don't think they're going to change anything. I think they know.
egocentric enough to think that they're the one that could change things. You know what I mean? And I think that they
Also,
end up like letting the system bring them down, and then they just sort of go along with everything their party asks of them. You know, that's why I feel like first and second year congressmen are much more like activist oriented, and then they could just kind of like become toe the party line from here on out. Go ahead with your point.
no, so but I've talked to someone who was running with me, and I won't put his name out there because what he
Sure.
told me. But a lot of them, a lot of them already know, especially the first and second year, they're one going in there just to get reelected again.
Yeah, 100%.
Most politicians, and the second, all of them already know that they're only there to fundraise for
Yeah.
the party. So they're not really there to really represent. It's to fundraise and cast this vote on this issue.
I think
So a
that's
lot
the
of
main difference between the establishment picks versus the grassroots activist people running. And I feel like that's where we found so much problems, is we were actually trying to win and like change things and talk to people on the ground versus Adam Hattersley, our opponent, who was endorsed by every Democrat in Florida. He was already kind of like anointed, so that he already knew the deal. He already admitted that he'd spend 10 hours a day talking to donors.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
And with that, and I got him 2,000 extra votes.
Yeah, he still lost.
Yeah, we ran neck and neck with them. So I mean, at some point, raising money doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
But you do have to connect with people. But I guess my position is, you do all this time trying to connect, and you get these people involved, and you get their hearts inspired for change and for growth, to get there and to be like, you're just a number. You're gonna do this vote, even if it hurts your district. You're still gonna vote this way, and we'll give you X amount of dollars so you can outspend the next guy.
Yeah.
And then you'll be here for 20 years, and maybe possibly you may get one bill that you want.
And I do think it's more indirect than that, because I don't think that it's not like they say like don't read the bill. It's the bills are so massive intentionally that they can't read it. So you just sort of have to trust that people on your side are looking out for the same interests as you are. So that's why it just gets too easy for them to not use their own brain and use their own sense of discernment. These massive omnibus bill packages are 10,000 pages on purpose. That's where all the meat is. All the things that are messing up our entire economy and our society are, between the lines. Read between the
So
lines.
where are you guys on the president? Is he a guy who is in it only for himself, or is he a guy
Pretty
who thinks
much.
he can make America great again?
90-10.
Which
I think
way?
he's for
Come on.
himself. For
Yeah.
himself. I mean,
That was the
he's
whole
made
intention.
he's made so much money.
I thought Seth was making the argument that a lot of politicians want to make America great.
Trump's not a politician. Trump is
So
a businessman.
okay? Let me throw out a counterexample.
Sure.
By the way, I'm not sure you're wrong, but let me throw out a counterexample that's a little bit silly, but you'll get my point. Did you see the press conference? Was it yesterday or today? I can't keep track of the hours, from the Kennedy Center when he was announcing the award winners.
I heard vaguely. I don't know too much.
Now, this is what he said, right? He announces the 5 folks. They're all either agnostic or Republicans. The band Kiss, which is before your time, had a couple of guys, we weren't really sure where they were politically, and one of them was Republican. So, these people are okay by Trump. A reporter asks him, to what extent were you personally involved in these picks? He says 98% I was involved. Now, nobody really knows what that means, not only because you don't know what the number means, but you don't even know what the word involved means.
I agree.
This is what he says. He explains it for us. And CNN was asleep at the switch. They did not pick up on this. He says that he personally crossed people off the list because they were too woke. Okay.
That's so subjective.
Of course it is. So subjective.
Yeah.
But it's also, you would have hoped that politics was being left out of this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he's admitting it's political. He's admitting that he's doing the picks himself.
Yeah.
Okay? Neither one of which should be happening, both of which are bad.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's my question. Does a guy who's only in it for himself do something that dumb?
Yes.
Because it seems to me that what he revealed is he really does think that he can make America better by crossing people off the list.
Here's where I disagree.
I'm not arguing he's smart.
Yeah.
I'm arguing he thinks
Yeah.
this isn't all about me. It's just that I'm the only smart guy in
Here's
Washington.
the thing. It is about him because I don't think he sees woke the same way other Republicans do or whatever. Or he, most people use it as anything I don't agree with, any virtue signaling, anytime anybody's talking about their own values or something like that. I think he sees it as just, I'm marking off my critics. These people are likely to speak out against me. These people are likely to disagree with me. I don't see it
In other words, by woke, he means anti-Trump.
Yes, exactly. That's how I see it. I see everything
could
is
be right.
anti-Trump. Yeah.
You
I don't
could be right.
I don't think he cares too much about social values in the culture war. I think he uses that, and I do think maybe he's more involved than he was in 2016, 2020. I do think over time, eventually, you start to get you're a president for 12 or 8 years or whatever. Yeah, you're going to be political, obviously. But his whole intention was always, he's a performer. That's his best audience. He can talk. He didn't expect to win. He expected to use it to promote his name and promote his brand and stuff like that. And when he actually won, I think he was a little shocked. And, then his ego is involved. Now I'm president. Now I want to be the best president there ever was. And I want people to love me. And I want people to praise me. It's always a form of self-infatuation. It's always been a way to gain praise or gain some sort of approval that he didn't get when he was a child from his own father. And I think everything is downstream from that. Every single thing that's political is blinded by that fact. Who rejected me, who accepted me, who is my in-group, who loves me, who hates me. That's everything.
I have no evidence to the contrary.
Yeah. Like completely broke him down there.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I think for a lot of people in MAGA, it's not that political either. I don't even think most people in the MAGA cult or whatever, I don't even think they care that much about the actual policies or anything. I think they like being a part of a group. That's what they see as being an American. That's what they see as America first. During 9/11, we all felt unified. We all felt like we were one country and we had something to fight for together. And
now there's a little bit of a little piece of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what they want to make America great again, is that sort of feeling. It's all about how they feel. It's nothing to do with the actual consequences or their material interests. It's purely about being a part of an in-group, a powerful in-group, the predominant in-group.
The most powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just the way I see it. It's all personality cult, and there's some politics wrapped up in it, for sure, because politics, government, all this is just about power. And this is all about getting things that you want. You need power. Because I don't think that the United States...
culture.
Go ahead.
I think we say that all the time. It's about power. But I don't think we ever define what power is for the viewers. What is power?
Power and freedom, I feel like, go hand in hand to an extent. Like,
well, what is power?
I mean, they're opposites?
No, I think that, well, yes, in a way. But I think that your personal power is your freedom. You have the power, you have the lack of...
Right, so when we talk about political power, we're talking about the opposite. It's power to compromise someone else's freedom. It's power to make decisions for someone else.
Why I say it's for your own personal whatever. I'm saying that there's nothing holding you back from anything that you want or you want to do towards others or anything. There's nothing above you. Power is being unobstructed. That's the same as freedom in a way. Freedom and power are both about being unobstructed by something with more power or with the ability to take your power or freedom away from you. So if you have nothing above, I feel like that's the shared fundamental goals. Now, I do think there's obvious differences because I don't think my side of people who view freedom is a form of power above others or anything like that. Like I said, I do think it's a power.
No, that's the difference between the word power and the word freedom. When we say power, we mean an ability to affect someone else.
Yes, but like I said, is your freedom to, like I said, freedom in the sense that there's nothing holding you back, not necessarily the same like God-given freedom you're born with, like that sense of freedom. I'm talking about like uninhibited.
Yep.
There's nothing stopping you. There's no restrictions.
Well, what you mean is the
Yeah.
extent to which you
Go ahead.
have that latitude. It doesn't mean it's all or nothing. There are gradations of all of this.
Yeah, everything
Yeah,
is. Go ahead, Jesse.
Who really has power? I mean, let's think about it for a second. The Congress, they don't have power. They essentially, you elect them, they have to do whatever the party says. If they veer away from the party, then they get it booted out. There's no power there. When you look at the Senate,
Not
if
as
you look at-
individuals, but as
Yeah.
a team, they have
They have the
power.
group, yes.
Yeah.
As
They
a
have the
group, they
keys
have
to power, but they're not the driver.
They're not the driver of power.
Yeah.
So we're saying, well, they're getting elected for power. They're not really getting elected for power because they don't have it. Now, if their
Yeah.
group is like, hey, you could win this seat because you have this demographic, because you have this background, and that will work, be their representative so we can have more people in our group, then the group has power. And isn't it incumbent on us to figure out what group is picking the people?
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't know. We just have a politician that comes in and smiles and says, "Hey, I've been here for 20 years, living in the community. I just want to get back to my country." And crack a smile, and they're like, "Vote for me."
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing, right? So when I see that, when we're telling people, we're like, "Oh, they're just getting there for power," it's not really what they're getting there for. They're getting there to fulfill an agenda that a subset of group, Trump calls it the deep state,
Yeah.
whatever, a subset of group wants to do. So if people want real change, I think we really need to focus on that. Let's start talking about, hey, what are these groups that are contributing to your state that you're in currently, right? Because it's not the politician. The politician has no power. It's the group that is paying for the politician. It's the group that needs that politician in that seat so they can pass this particular agenda. And I feel like...
Oh, I'm just saying, I feel like that goes along with like the establishment in a sense. I don't see that necessarily mean establishment politicians. Not the not establishment politicians, that's what I'm saying, is the establishment of power itself. Those are already the rich, powerful people, the people that already have the influence, that already don't have to work for anything because they already have something established, pre-existing. So they're just there to protect their own status above you. You know what I mean? So that's the real establishment, is the donor class, the celebrities, and the very powerful owners of large corporations that are trying to use those corporations to manipulate the market so we don't have a free market anymore.
Too. It's not just corporations. Environmental groups do the same thing.
I agree.
Non-for-profit groups do the same thing.
Collective interest groups.
Yeah. I know for a fact, if you run in, I forget what district it is, if you run and you're a woman in that district, you will get majority of the support because they're funded by, I forgot the name of the women's group.
Emily's List?
Yeah, Emily's List. Yeah, that's the group. So that is literally the system.
I agree.
The Emily List wants someone in that seat that's a woman, and they will always give her money, no matter if she's a terrible candidate or not a terrible candidate. And that, to me, is the fundamental issue, is like, why are we not having that conversation as Americans? Yeah. It's like, okay, what are these groups that are pulling America a certain direction? Not the individual, because the politician doesn't really have power.
I agree.
What is the I was saying earlier, Trump has made the most money probably out of any president in a lifetime. Yeah. And he's like, he tells people like, oh, I'm donating my $400,000 salary to, this charity because I'm just a great guy, right? But if you look underneath, he's made already in 6 months, he's made like $1.1 billion.
Yeah.
He's being in office.
He's more wealthy than when he came in.
Yeah. No one is talking about that.
Yeah.
His supporters are going to be like, well, he's just a smart man. And the Democrats are going to be like, no, he's doing stock manipulation.
Yeah.
Which we all know he's doing.
And then like the whole crypto coin scam. Do you remember that whole thing where there was like a
that's
Trump
where most
coin?
of this money came from, was the meme that he was
meme
selling.
coin. right?
Yeah, unicorn. Yeah.
No, it's insane that we would allow this
Yeah.
for a politician to behave this way, but
Yeah.
we do because we didn't have a law sufficiently specific
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
knocking it down.
Yep.
It's very difficult. To Seth's point about integrity being the most important thing, it's very difficult to write a criminal code that
Yeah.
is going to be sufficiently specific that as technologies change, it's always going to be something you can use to prosecute new bad behavior. Very, very difficult. At the end of the day, you're relying on integrity.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the point. It's like, I think everyone that's in the fight, we need to start talking about the groups
Yeah.
of power versus the individual politicians.
Yeah.
Because groups of power is what's willing this system. It's not, and we know who they are. It's not a deep state.
Yeah.
Right, and it does
like-
come up from time to time. We know that there are certain donors and certain
Yeah.
groups of donors and characteristics of donors that matter a great deal. We know that certain corporations have enormous influence. I mean, the silliest easy example is the military-industrial complex that we've been talking about for 70
Yep.
years. But there are plenty of others, whether it's big pharma, right?
Mhm.
We're aware of the influence that some of these groups have.
Do you think now Madani in New York is going to be like the first candidate that I guess the people are finally saying, hey, enough's enough? Like, we don't believe you anymore. We don't actually believe that you're going to fix our lives. We don't believe you're going to change. And so his candidacy is kind of and his chance of winning is kind of indicative of people are just fed up.
I think so. I think that that's why President Trump was elected too.
Mm-hmm.
That's why
Yeah,
there's so much statistical crossover between supporters of Bernie Sanders and supporters of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And now there's going to be some crossover between supporters of Donald Trump and Bandami. It's just a matter of being upset with the system. To a certain extent, it's an analytic, rejection of the way the system works.
Yeah.
But to your earlier point, it's also a matter of just how people feel. If you're frustrated with your life and you have a tendency to blame it on the outside world,
Yeah.
that's what leads people to vote against anything that smells like the establishment, no matter how good or bad it is.
Yeah. I was going to mention, 23% of conservatives in New York City are voting for Mamdani. 23%, which that sounds like the right percentage. Like, some of them are going to go for the Republican, and then some will go for, I don't know, they liked Eric Adams because he seemed chill or whatever, but it makes sense.
Eric Adams should drop out that race. That he's kind of.
Well, part of
Yeah,
the
he's
problem is
only
you
in
got a
the-
bunch of other candidates who aren't very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
he's benefiting from that.
Yeah, that's true.
Or people not even knowing that he was indicted on corruption charges and stuff. Like, the non-educated voters can be like, oh yeah, he's the mayor, right? Yeah, I could definitely see a lot of people doing that, but
Right.
I mean,
And the
statistically,
deal
it's
that
not
was
enough.
cut with the administration.
What was that?
And the deal that was cut with the administration, people, a lot of people don't pay attention to that level of detail.
Yeah.
I understand that.
With mayoral politics, even if it's New York City, who's really dialed into that? Yeah.
It's hard. Most people aren't dialed into who's the president of the United States going to be when, in October before a November election. Most people don't know what it is that they're voting for.
Yeah.
Do you think we made some good points at the end that were, like, I don't know, revelatory towards me? Because I do feel like I expected this whole conversation to be a lot more about what we disagree on, and I'm sure we could talk for an hour about economics or whatever, and I'm sure we could find every single point in which we disagree. But the thing that was underlying it all is, like, we have the exact same, like, I don't want to say enemy, but yeah, we have the exact same enemy, that we're critiquing the exact same powers and the exact same structures and the exact same people because we want a much more healthy, balanced system with integrity. And I feel like that's much more important to focus on right now, when there is such a big opposition to freedom out there right now. I feel like we really should take everything we can and come together and find anything that we can agree on, because at some point there's got to be some force that's going to put an end to this kind of nonsense, this idiocy that's running the government. And I mean, a full thwarted left and right anti-authoritarian movement, I think, is something that's more realistic than ever with how much they're pushing us. They're testing us. They're wanting to see what is it going to take for us to react and come together and like actually oppose the Trump administration for the nonsense that they're doing. So I think this is a good time in society for that reason. I feel like it's kind of like the 60s. We're going to have like this massive movements of all these different ideologies and perspectives and people trying to push back, because people are going to be more politically involved than decades because they're kind of forced to be. So I think this is going to be
You may be right. I
interesting
think that let me just speak to that really quickly.
Sure.
I think that this is a unique time. I think a lot of things are coming together at once. I think that for a couple of different reasons. One is that our government is presenting to our society what are, in my view, truly existential threats.
Yeah.
One is the financial crisis that the federal government is heading toward.
I agree.
That if there's not a very serious course correction, the federal government will be unable to meet its obligations in a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, not because we love the federal government, but because of financial failure of the federal government of the United States would cast the entire globe into a deep depression.
Yeah.
And a very deep depression that would be very difficult from which to recover. The other thing our government does that I believe presents a potentially societal existential threat is that we continue to engage in other people's wars.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the fact that President Trump and his administration seem to want to avoid that. Very good thing.
Iran.
I don't know, pre-Iran. I don't know that others that will follow him feel the same way.
Yeah.
But it's not so much that everything that we do in foreign policy is so profoundly stupid. It is that we do so many things that are stupid, because it's sort of a problem of the law of large numbers. You know, you can't keep spinning the wheel as often as we do and expect that at no point is a bad situation going to come up from which it's difficult to extract yourself. Yeah. And then the third threat that I see that is potentially existential for our society is the political polarization. And that is something that I thought was completely untrue as recently as 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I thought that people were exaggerating, and maybe in fairness to me at the time, people were exaggerating the extent to which we might be headed toward people use the term civil war.
Yeah.
But now, when you've got the governor of New York saying that a redistricting in Texas, which, personally I think is dopey, I don't like it, but no matter how dopey Mike thinks it is something that happens all the time. Mm-hmm. I know it doesn't happen in the middle of the decade. I get that. It's different, blah, 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 blah. I know all the talking points. But when the governor of New York says this is war, really,
are you talking about Newsom?
No. When Kathy Hochul says this is war.
Newsom also said it too, but yeah.
Okay.
Newsom says to hell with the rules, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if your leading governors say that the Constitution no longer matters, I know that that's not what they mean, but when they say it, when they say the Constitution no longer matters because of something that's been done 25 times in the past.
Yeah.
Your nation is in trouble. That's a problem, because you can imagine the rioting that took place in 2020, right?
Yeah.
You've got COVID, and you've got bad police behavior, and you've got fears of racism, each one of which somebody might argue round or square, but you throw all that into the pot, right? And you get a lot of rioting that year. You could imagine a scenario in the future in which that's worse, and you can imagine the future a federal government that reacts very badly to that.
Yeah.
And that's a downward spiral, right? When you're imposing martial law, you saw people in Los Angeles were upset just because we sent, 1,000 National Guardsmen and Marines, in the grand scheme of things, not that big a deal. People were very upset. Understandably, I'm not suggesting they shouldn't have been. But that was a relatively low scale, silly response from the White House. Imagine a large scale, silly response from the White House on top of something that was really bad. Yeah. These things matter. And I think the big thing that's going to matter in the future is not the Democratic Party. I think they have taken themselves out of intellectual debate for the next decade.
I'd
not
say
the
at least
Libertarian
until they
Party.
get new leadership.
The issue is, how is the Republican Party going to replace Donald Trump? What is going to fill that vacuum? Is it going to be authoritarianism and nationalism and populism and all the bullshit? Or is it going to be free markets and adherence to the Constitution and fiscal conservatism and a rationalized foreign policy and medical freedom and, a lot of stuff that we all want to see? We're on a knife's edge. And how that is decided is going to determine the course of the federal government over the next few years, several years. And a lot is riding on it in a much bigger way than in the past. You know how we always used to say, oh, it's the biggest election ever. The last few elections, there wasn't much on the line. I mean, you really didn't have many differences in terms of spending and war and all that among the Republicans and the Democrats. But how the Republican Party decides to fill the vacuum of Donald Trump leaving is going to determine how the federal government of the United States responds to these threats.
Yeah.
That's why I'm working inside the Republican Liberty Caucus, because I believe that that is the right brand to try to affect the direction the Republican Party goes in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I do hope for your sake that is the case to take, but I don't see it likely as them going from the Tea Party movement to a populist movement back to the Tea Party movement. I feel like you mixed up the Democrats and Republicans, and which one's going to be out of contention with changing their mind in the next 10 years. I feel like the Republicans are going to be trying to recreate Trump for the next few election cycles, just pretending like it wasn't a unique person that set that straight. They're going to try to make J.D. Vance the next guy, and then after that they're going to try, I don't know, maybe they'll throw a Nikki Haley in there.
That is a possibility. Yeah. That's what makes this so important.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's
I agree with you. There will be a whole lot of people that try to make that happen.
Yeah.
And if that does happen, those three threats that I specified become very real problems.
Yeah. I just find it hard to believe that everything we've seen from Trump so far and the amount of Republicans that have not changed their mind at all. I can't imagine that they would change it after seeing everything and none of that affected their opinions. I can't imagine they're just going to completely change their values back to something more pure. But I really, really, really hope for the entire nation's sake that somebody steps in, has a completely ideologically altering message that changes the Republicans, because I don't.
Well, a lot of Republicans. I think there are a lot of Republicans who aren't in the Trump cult.
They're just not very vocal.
They're just not very vocal. I think that Rand Paul might run for president.
I could see that.
I don't know that he will, but if he does, seems to have this affinity for flying to Iowa and New Hampshire lately. Good for him. If he does, I think a lot of people would rally around that, and I think that could matter. Yeah. I don't know that he's the next president of the United States, but if enough Republicans were to rally around that, I think that could matter. That could move the needle. That could create enough pressure on whoever does become the president of the United States.
Yeah.
That could matter. The other argument I would offer for y'all to think about is the as opposed to what, right? We're saying that it's an uphill climb to foster libertarianism inside the Republican Party. Yeah, that's an uphill climb. No kidding, right? No kidding. As opposed to what? What's the
Democratic Party.
The Democratic Party
But we're talking about leadership versus voters. Don't forget, the voters are much, much, much more libertarian than you seem to believe. Trust me, because I made the switch.
No,
from
I do
libertarian
believe you.
Yeah.
I do believe you.
That's why I think there's a chance.
I firmly am convinced that the Democratic Party will develop a libertarian wing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think they could.
Absolutely. And I think that the process of that will begin 10 years from now.
Wow.
I think the process is now.
That's
I think
the problem. That's the problem. And 10 years from now is too late.
I think you're missing what's on the ground, though. And I think that that's something that you should look into, because I feel it could make you a lot happier. Because I've seen the most libertarian movements being in the Democratic Party for the last 6 months than I've seen in a while. And like I said, I don't even know that it's predominant or if it's specifically in
from
the
your lips to God's ears. I hope so. So
Yeah.
you should be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's what I am doing.
You should be launching a new caucus inside the Democratic Party and turning it into a political force. That's what I'm doing inside the Republican Party.
Ever heard of
doing it inside the Democratic Party.
Have you ever heard of the Democratic Freedom Caucus?
Yes.
Like that Twitter account? I started that Twitter account like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Like I've been on this. I've been trying. You know, we're doing what we can do. But like
Good
I said,
for you.
I think that well, they also had bureaucratic. You know.
Let me know what I could do to help you. But I do believe that you've got to build that into a political force.
Yeah.
Not merely a voice. It has to.
I agree.
Spread its wings. Give it a chance to develop some grassroots geographically. That was where we
hit some setbacks. Is we were creating like a sort of movement online, and then the people that actually owned technically the caucus, they had just been engaging in like email formats back and forth for like a decade. They didn't want to change anything. You got to find out how their charters can be created, how their state chapters can be created. We are creating now. We've got a tremendous relationship with the Republican Liberty Caucus board, right? Yeah.
The board is a terrific group of people. A bunch of folks from my campaign left the Libertarian Party, joined the Republican Liberty Caucus, and we're running a project to start new chapters around the United States.
Yeah.
And the board supports us, and we get data into the hands of leaders, political stalwarts in these respective states, and then they go about the process of creating new chapters.
Yeah.
It's a tremendous amount of work. If I make this sound easy, I have misspoken, right?
I know it is.
I know you do.
Yeah.
But it is the fastest, in my estimation, my guess is it's the fastest way to affect a policy debate that is coming at us with lightning speed.
Yeah.
You know, we've got years, not decades, to address these issues.
Yeah.
And I believe that the Democratic Party is likely too many years behind, but I don't know that with any certainty, number one. Number two, even if I'm right, and the debate that matters over the next 7 years is inside the Republican Party, if we survive those threats, which we may or may not, if we survive those threats, then we want the Democratic Party to be as healthy and as libertarian as possible. So that's why I would encourage you to pursue it.
Yeah, that's why I feel like we're kind of on the same boat in this. Is we're both like, we'll disagree on economics or whatever, but we're kind of both see Libertarian Party, third parties kind of they're dead on water. So the best you can do is kind of change the minds of the people that are already have their minds changed by the party that they belong to. It's like if that's how they're going to make their opinions, then you need to change the party itself.
I agree.
Yeah.
And in the off chance that you and I are both wrong about the Libertarian Party, let's hope that they also become big and effective as rapidly as possible.
I don't see any harm of that, even if I disagree ideologically. I think that more people in the conversation, especially about freedom, it just changes the way that you talk about ideas, and so it changes the way you address policies. I think that that's why, very importantly, I think like ranked choice voting, things like this, things that encourage like other voices other than left or right, Democrat, Republican, I'm a Democrat, but I think that having more conversation changes the message. And if you are having the same conversation with the same person for 50 years, you're not going to get very far, and you're not going to change any ideas. So I don't know. That's why we're stuck. Is we haven't had any competition, anybody challenging these two perspectives. Which I don't think there's only two perspectives, but that's all the establishment, the party leaders are willing to present to us.
No, I hear you. No, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
You guys have been great tonight. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me.
Yeah, and Mike, I just want to thank you for coming on. I know we went way past our time. But
That's all right.
It was great. I mean, between Seth and Mike, that was awesome. I can tell you this. There's some breaking news before I let you guys go, by the way.
Sure.
So apparently, DC has a new commissioner. Whoever's the head of the DEA is now the new police commissioner of DC.
Yep.
I don't know how that's possible, but we'll figure that out in another show. But I want to thank you guys for imagining more, and thanking for Micah coming on. There's so much to talk about. Our can't do it. We're gonna have to break it down into series or parts. But I want to thank you guys once again for tuning in. Thanks, Mike, for taking his time to enlighten us again with his ideologies, because it's so interesting. Because when you talk to libertarians, I've never found someone who's been able to explain it better than Mike. To be honest with you,
very well articulated. I appreciate it, Mike.
Very well, very well, and we thank you for that. And Seth, you got any final words? Mike, got any final words before we let go?
Oh, that's a wrap. Anyone that wants to get involved with the Republican Party, reach out to me, Mike at MikeTerMaat.com.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I don't want to take too much more time. I feel like we got a lot covered this episode, and it's a little bit because we haven't been here in 2 months, so we need to make it more regular so we can get these episodes, 1 hour.
Break this one into two. This is a part one and a part two.
That's valid. But I am starting to segment and highlights and clips, and I feel like that works a lot better for viewership anyways. So that's what
you go.
Anyway. If you want to watch the whole episode, it'll be on Spotify and YouTube. Otherwise, I'm posting shorts. I'm posting shorter videos throughout the week, throughout the month. So
that's it,
Tune
guys.
in.
Stay tuned. Imagine more.
All right,
Have
thank
a
you
good
guys.
Day. Bye.
All right, I think we're good.